We acknowledge the original owners of the land on which we podcast, whose stories were told for thousands of years. Today, we are recording in Meanjin. We pay our respects to elders past and present who may be listening. Sovereignty was never ceded. A quick note before we get started that there may be some swearing in today's podcast. If you don't like swearing or usually listen with children in the car, you have been warned. You're listening to What in the NDIS Now, a podcast where I, Hannah Redford, and my friend Sam Rosenbaum interview participants and providers about all things NDIS. Hi, welcome to this episode. Today, Sam wasn't able to make the recording session, which is totally fine. He's super busy. But today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Nicole. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how are you?
I'm really well. How are you?
Good. I'm very excited.
That's awesome. That's what we like to hear. So where did you grow up?
I grew up on the Gold Coast in Palm Beach. Loved it. It was nice. It was quiet before it got really busy. So just basically going to the beach every afternoon and the creek and just hanging out with friends, basically. It was really nice.
Oh, that's awesome. Sounds very idyllic.
Yeah.
So how did you get into the disability sector?
So I was working in the workwear industry for like 8 years, and I just thought it's not filling my cup anymore. It's just not working anymore, and I really wanted to help in my community. So I started out in Parents Next, and when I was in Parents Next, there was NDIS there as well, and my NDIS manager kept saying to me, you really should be doing NDIS, like you're really great with people, you're caring, you're empathetic. So basically it just started from there about a year ago, and I haven't looked back since, and I just absolutely love it. There's just lots of really great people, and it's nice just to help.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing now.
So I work as an NDIS career coach. So I help people on SLES and finding and keeping a job. I help people from 15 to 65, so it's a really big age gap. Yeah. So we help build capacity and build confidence, build rapport, lots of mock interview practice, because I find that that's always an issue for pretty much everyone you ever speak to. It's always that nervous energy that always comes off. So my theory is if the more you ask the same sort of questions or in different ways, it helps. And by the time you get to an interview, it's so much easier because you've been asked them a million times. Yeah. So, yeah, it's mainly just about, building up capacity, and once they're ready to find work, actually getting them into work and making sure that it's actually what they want to do. I don't like putting people in shit jobs. I'm kind of against it. And, I don't want someone to, not want to go or be miserable. I want them to be actually happy and interested in what they do as well, because as you know, if you're not interested, you're not putting your whole heart in, and money is good, but it's not completely worth it if you're not fulfilled. That's the main reason.
Yeah, and you don't want to just put someone in a job just because a position is there.
Yes.
And it just needs to be filled.
Yep. Yeah, it's always that can be a lot of that sort of side as well. And so some people too just want a job, but it's not that they want a job, they just are so nervous that they want to hurry up and get one. And I'm always like, it's good, but you don't want to rush yourself into something that you're actually not 100% happy with, and you don't really know what you want. It's about figuring out what you do and don't like and what you want in life, not just any old job. Any old job's okay short term, but on the long term, let's be honest, you don't want to be stuck in something that you haven't got your whole heart in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how is it like group programs? Is it one-on-one? How does that work?
We do one-on-one. We do offer group. I haven't had anyone say yes to group, which is like a fair call, I guess, because let's be honest, it makes it a bit nerve-wracking. Some people, so some of my co-workers, they've got people in like 2, so kind of like a group. But that's because they also wanted to build like friendships in their local area. So she was like, oh my God, these two have the perfect personality for each other. I think they're going to get on like a house on fire, and getting them to come together, which is what I love about it too. So yeah, it's more about like the friendship kind of thing as well, and like building nice connections.
Awesome. And so do you take people through like also how to write a resume, how to look
Yes.
for jobs?
Yes, we do resume writing, cover letters. I really help them with that as well because I must admit that's the one thing I get stumped with when I try to talk about myself. I can't really write my own resume very well because I don't know. You get to that thought where you're like, I don't know what to say about myself. I'm just me. How do I explain that to somebody?
I'm me. Please just hire me.
I'm me. I work good. That's like, there's not much more in it. I've literally wrote that down on a resume and I was like, right, this is not going to get me a job. So yeah, I help with resumes all the way through because I find it's a lot easier for them to tell me what they do and don't like and interests and skills and stuff, and then me put it in like nice fancy words and make it look really pretty. So yeah, we do a lot of resume, cover letter writing, and yeah, how to apply for jobs online. We do a lot of marketing. So we'll actually take people out and meet different businesses and stuff and kind of talk with them like about, so if they say, okay, well, I'd like to work in a coffee shop. So we ask, okay, well, where do you find your employees? Do they need any like skills or certificates, like a barista course? And funnily enough, usually it gets people jobs because the business owner's like, oh my God, you're not asking for a job. You're asking, how does someone go about maybe getting a job in this industry? And we'd like to focus more on smaller businesses as well because like the HR process in a lot of the bigger businesses can kind of just be a nightmare to get through to even speak to just the one person, and, you know, AI as well when it's screening stuff and it's not actually meeting the actual human being. So yeah, we find it works really well. It's community mapping. There we go. I've got the word now. Yeah, so we do a lot of that, and we like to community map within a 20k radius of their house because also the same theory of how do you get to and from work if you can't get a license or you're on your Ps or learners and still working towards it. We also do travel training as well. So once someone says, okay, well, this is where I need to get to and from work, we'll actually hop on a bus and a train and we'll map it out together to work out how much time, how long is it going to take to walk to work and how close and that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, awesome. And when someone is looking at like Seek or, you know, a site like that, do you teach them also like red flags in that, you know, words to look out for that are like,
It's hard to know because I always find it's not necessarily, it can be the wording, but it's also if they're really, really like aggressively direct. You know, when you read something where there's like, I do not want time wasters, and it's really full on and you think, okay, these guys might be a little bit harder, but it's also too that looking at those businesses and actually going to speak to the employers there as well, because you never know, they might just maybe be a bit blunt as well sometimes, as you know, as some people can be in writing. Yeah, so yeah, red flags for that, especially in the businesses though, because I like to actually go into the businesses with people, suss it out myself and kind of just look around and go, okay, first off, is it clean and tidy? Is it safe? Because, you know, sometimes you look around and you think, this isn't a safe workplace, they're going to get injured. And then also the happiness of the other staff too, because you can usually get a pretty good idea if everyone looks miserable. You can say it's a great place to work, but I'm putting money on it, it's not. So, yeah, it's all those, like, little things. And because I'm a bit of a people watcher, I'm kind of very aware of, like, the social cues. And I'm like, that's us. I don't like that. And, yeah, my spidey senses tingle. And I'm like, no, it's not going to work.
Yeah, awesome. So once they've got a job, then does you sort of stop working with them, or what happens then?
So usually what we do is we dual service with Des, so for about 6 months. So we work together to make sure it's nice and cohesive. And usually we'll do it on the, like, so my session will be with the Des person as well. So then they're not having to, like, speak to multiple different people and go to all these appointments. I will take the person to the appointment, listen as well, find out if there's any other way to help. But no, we don't believe in just kind of just going, okay, yeah, you're sweet, you've got the job and I'm going to bail on you, because there's like anxiety and stuff, you know, like when you first start, you might be having issues with co-workers that I can maybe like mend over for you, talk with the boss as well, like if something's not necessarily working, but also speak with the boss to the person and say, hey, like this behaviour they're not really happy with, how can we kind of make it better for everybody, basically.
Oh, that's good. I think that's really important.
It is. I hate when you're just like, okay, you've got the job, you're sweet, like you're done now. And it's like, well, it's not, because just because the person's got the job, they might not have like the right behaviours down. They might not know their rights properly either. Like they might have forgotten, because we do go over that. But sometimes when you're in that situation, you don't think about it. I mean, I've been in jobs and I've known my rights and I still haven't done anything about it, and I've kind of been stuck. But if someone was there to like talk me through it and kind of jump in for me, it would have made my life so much easier.
Oh, absolutely. I've definitely been there myself.
Yeah, you just, that iffy
And
area.
you're scared because you're like, if I make waves, will I no longer have a job, or will it make for a hostile work environment?
Yep. And that's the thing, like, you don't want to maybe even just rock the boat, because you don't want to be known as that person as well who's, always complaining and whinging, because
I am that person.
No, some places where you're like, all they ever do is whinge, like they're just not a happy person. You don't want to be known as that at the workplace all the time. Like you want to be mostly positive. Yeah, so it's kind of important.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about wages?
Yeah.
Because you do have to negotiate, like a lot of people are on DSP. And is there like a set number of hours they're only allowed to work?
So from what I know, and I don't know heaps because I know it's more of like a Centrelink issue, and, trying to get like a proper answer out of Centrelink sometimes is a little bit hard because they don't know. I'm pretty sure they can't go over, I believe it's 28 hours a week. I go for full open employment as well because I don't really like wage subs. The only reason I offer a wage sub is if they might be a little bit unsure and they kind of I need to let the person prove themselves. But yeah, I'm not big on offering wage subs or like that lower rate that's offered. I'm more for proper open employment because these guys deserve it.
Yeah. So I want to quickly talk a little bit about wage subsidy because it is a hot button topic at the moment.
Yeah.
So what does that often look like?
So usually if a person says, hey, I really want this job, the employer might be a little bit unsure because, like I said, they might not be sure about the disability and how that's going to look in the workplace. They might be new to knowing disabilities as well because, some people just don't know. So it's about 10 weeks is offered as like a wage sub. So it's kind of like we will pay like a part of their wages for you to employ them, kind of see how great they are basically. And then after that, it goes back to normal like employment, like open proper employment after that. So it's just more to get the person the job at the start to prove themselves. And then the wage sub goes away after 10 weeks. Yeah.
Some people don't know what they want to do or what
100%.
Kind of job to go into.
100%.
How do you help figure out with them what is that process of sort of vocational figuring out?
So we meet in homes and in like local areas. So we like to get to know the person, their friends, their family, because also the family know their interests. We kind of like to call ourselves investigators as well because we will ask, okay, so what are your hobbies? What do you do in your spare time? Like, so some of them is like computers. They're really obsessed with things. And I'm like, well, this would kind of be perfect. Have you thought about doing something in computers? Because they get hyper-focused. And I'm like, it's not really working when you're enjoying yourself that much. You're just having a great old time tinkering and figuring things out. So it's more about getting to know the person, not just going, oh, okay, these are the jobs I've got. It's more about, okay, what are your hobbies, your interests? Do you like being outdoors? I've got one fellow who's going to be doing landscaping because he absolutely loves being outdoors. So it's, more about finding what the person actually enjoys doing in their free time. Also asking their family and their friends too, what do you think they might enjoy or what are their hobbies? Because, again, friends and family usually will always know a person better than you ever will when you're coming in. And it's more about getting to know the person. Like, it's a nice proper process, not just, oh, okay, I think you'd be great at this and then doing that. We do, like, also the personality testing as well. It's handy, but also just because your personality says you'd be really great at this, you might not enjoy it. So we kind of I use that as like the last stopgap when someone's really like, I still really just don't know. So it's more about figuring out, like I said, what they do and don't enjoy and finding a job that works for them in that industry.
Yeah, and I think for me in my journey, has definitely taken just doing a job, any job,
Yep.
and then going, oh no, hang on, I don't like that. But then that has sort of led into something else. And then you, a bit like what you were talking about being in Next, and then someone saying, oh, you could be in the NDIS. Like, that was the same for me.
Yeah.
I was at a company, and a support company, and they said, hey, the NDIS is coming in now. Do you want to change roles?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's how I became a support coordinator. And at first, I had no idea what that meant.
Yep.
And so, you know, I think that's how you sort of find where you're sort of supposed to be.
That's the thing, yeah, because everyone's always like, I don't know what I want to do. And I said, mate, I didn't know what I wanted to do till I was 31. I was happy just doing any job. It could be mind-numbing. Didn't really care. I never really thought much about it. But like I said, it hit a point for me where I was like, I really want to help my community. And this just isn't doing it for me anymore. I'm just, you know, dealing with different people as well who are getting a bit more, where they requested a lot more from you, and you'd be thinking, okay, like, these customers have changed. They're not just your usual people. They really want, you know, embroidery on the exact same day as buying a shirt, but you don't have the shirt in store, but they want it embroidered that day. And you'd be thinking, okay, but have you actually thought about this whole process? Like, it's not like oh my God, I've snapped my fingers, there it is, it's done, and you haven't even given me what you want embroidered. But it's that sort of stuff where I was like, this just isn't working. I would like to work in the community and actually help people. Yeah, I know. I've had so many fights with people. Yeah, I had one fellow tell me, no, well, you can get my shirts from Melbourne. It'll take 2 days. And I'm like, mate, I've told you it's 7 to 10 business days. This is where my shipping works. And then he came in 2 days later and he goes, no, the lady said 2 days. And I was like, I was the one that served you. So no, I didn't. It's those sort of things where you're like, no, mate, like, you're being entitled, basically, is the nicest way to say these sort of things. But I just thought I'd much prefer to be working with people who actually need help, not the entitled side of it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, man. I worked, when I was really young, I worked at Officeworks, and then I worked at Big W, and...
Right, so you would have seen the sense of entitlement. Yep.
And the Officeworks I worked at was in the Melbourne CBD.
Yep.
And so it was all the people from the offices and, you know, they have their black Amex cards, and they just sort of like throw them at you because they couldn't possibly touch you because
you're one of the lower people.
Yeah. Or the money, you'd have your hand out to get the money, and they just throw it onto the bench next to you, and you're like, yeah, okay, you can actually just
hand it to me.
Give it to me.
Must have been a couple of times I would then just throw the money back at them, like the change back at them, and they'd kind of look at me horrified, and I'm like, I'm just doing the same thing as you were doing, so is this not the correct behaviour that we're using?
Yeah. Or the people who don't understand how to shop in a shop, and they just expect that they can go to the front and just say, I want one of these and 12 of these and whatever. And I was like, no, you have to go around and pick up the things yourself.
Yeah, and it's okay to come and ask a staff member and go, hey, I actually don't know where this is. Where is this located? But you can't be like, no, you go get it for me and bring it to me. It doesn't really work that way.
No, it always mystified me, the people who didn't understand how shops work. I'm like, I'm confused.
Yeah, and like I said, it's the entitlement sometimes where they're like, well, I'm a paying customer. And I'm like, well, yes, you are, but the customer's not always right. I know they always say that, but I'm like, no, you're not. You're actually wrong here. I know you're wrong. I'm trying to find a nice way to say this to you, but you're actually wrong.
Yes. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
Yep.
I'm also a bit radical about it these days, in that, a bit like national service, what I think should happen is that when everyone turns 18, they have to do a year of working in retail, and that way, as you become a bit older, you understand what it is to work in retail and just be polite to people who are working in retail, because it fucking sucks.
It really does. It's the same though, like so McDonald's, and you know, like they're kind of prone to mucking up your order and that sort of stuff. And everyone gets angry and I'm like, yeah, but let's be honest, they're 15-year-olds and they're trying to chat each other up. It's that mindset. They're not really thinking about work. They're coming here to like pick up and hang out with friends basically and get paid to do it.
So you must have some good relationships with some businesses. So you know some people who automatically you go, oh, you might be really good
Perfect fit. Yes, not all businesses, because I also like to go into it not just recommending to people I necessarily know, but also what the person wants, because I don't know all businesses. I know a few businesses and I can get jobs very quickly in certain roles because, hey, I've got friends or family members who work in these roles, so it's easier. But it's more about, so if someone says to me, I want to work in IT, I don't personally know anyone in IT.
Yeah.
Not that smart. So, but I'll go speak to those businesses on behalf and find like the right fit, and also ask around as well, because so all of my co-workers, we all come from completely different backgrounds. It's so handy because everyone kind of knows someone or knows something. So we work together. It's not just, okay, this is my area and I've got no help. No, we all want to help each other and go, hey, you should actually speak to this person. They would be fantastic. Yeah, so that's what I like about it as well. We've got like a nice little network going.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that idea.
Mm-hmm. Share the information, not just hold it for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's much nice. It's a really nice work environment. I really scored with the people I work with. And everyone says it to me. They're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I love everyone I work with. They're fantastic. I can ring them and ask them what would be probably a stupid question, as we know this. They say there's no stupid question, but there is some stupid questions. But I can ask them and go, oh, hey, I don't know how to get this person interested. I'm a little bit stumped. And then someone will suggest maybe take them here, and that'll kind of open them up in that sort of way. And that's what I like too. Like, it's not, like I said, I'm not just working on my own. I've got a team who I can rely on and I can talk to, and they can give me advice. And we all kind of know someone in different industries as well, so it comes in handy as well.
Absolutely. The funding that you work under is finding and keeping a job, and it's SLES or...
So there's SLES, which can also be under finding and keeping a job CB. Yes. Then there's finding and keeping a job, which I think is for the older guys from 24 onwards. And then we can also bill out of core, which is capacity building, but we prefer to kind of then, like when a review comes up, move them into finding and keeping a job, because it's not necessarily the perfect system, but it helps people who really just haven't got the funding for finding a job, which I kind of think silly sometimes, because I'm like, it really should be everyone's, like, to go help your community, be out in your community, make friends. It really should be everyone's goal to find employment. I know there's some people that it's not, but it really should be like the end goal, I always think, because, you know, it brings so much happiness and joy, and you find that people are a lot happier when they're out talking with people and, you know, making friendships and that sort of stuff. If you're home all the time on your own, like as we know over COVID, everyone kind of got a bit depressed because we weren't hanging out with everyone like we usually would. So I just think it's good just for all around, like the mental health of it as well. I work with a lot of people with anxiety who are always nervous about that, but I always tell them, kind of force them out a little bit to be like, make conversations and talk, because like I always tell them, you might not like it, but this is the world, and the less you do it, the harder it's going to get, and you're going to get more in your head about it. So the more you can get over and done with it, you might not like it, but you can do it, and that's the most important thing, really.
So how often are you able to see a participant?
So I see all of my guys weekly. SLES is usually 2 to 4 hours. I usually break them up. It's usually, most of them are 2 hours though, because I do quite a lot. Like, it's a very intensive session. 4 hours is just too much for both of us, because mentally it's just draining on either side. And plus, if you actually ask someone after a 4-hour session, okay, so what did I say in that first 20 minutes? Could not tell you. To be honest, half the time I can't tell you because I've forgotten as well. So I like to keep it short and sweet, and I find that people are then retaining the information a lot easier than someone just basically talking at you the whole time.
Yeah, so sometimes they might just have the funding for 2 hours, sometimes they'll have it for 4 hours.
SLES is one bulk rate. So no matter how many hours I see a person, it's one bulk rate. But also with SLES as well, we work more in the background as well for other things to like kind of make up those hours as well to help them a bit further along. With core and finding and keeping a job, unfortunately, we've kind of got to keep it billed at the hourly. I will do background work, but I then have to charge for that time as well. So I usually try to do it all in that one session so I don't have to then add on more time because I don't really like doing it if I don't have to.
Yeah, okay. So do you want to tell me a bit more about SLES in general and how some of that works?
Yep, so SLES is obviously, like I said, building capacity and being out in the community and getting them to know their community. That's why I like our model, because we also do it out of the home too. I find that you don't really get to know a person as well if they're necessarily being picked up and coming to your office, because you're not actually knowing what their home life is like, you know, just like the background of it. And I also am a little bit iffy on like the telephone SLES services, purely because how can you actively look for a person, how can you actively look for a job for a person if you're not in their local area? How do you know who to put them with? And you might have recommendations, but if you haven't met the person, how do you know if it's the right fit? I don't like to recommend anyone I haven't personally met, because like I said, there's some people that just aren't necessarily in it for the right reasons. There are a lot of amazing people that are, but there are those few that you think you're in it for the money, you're not actually here to offer the proper service. But I feel like a proper SLES service is being a part of their home, like knowing their home life, their friends and their family, not just teaching them things. That is good, but you're not really going to get the whole like idea of a person by them just coming to you.
Could you give me the acronym? We've talked about the word SLES and we haven't actually said what that actually means.
Do you know how many times I've forgotten and I'm like, oh my God, how do I not know this? It is School Leaver Employment Supports. Yeah.
Amazing. You got it.
Yeah, I got it.
So that's typically for people who are 16 to 24 and it's usually over a 2-year period somewhere in there.
Yes.
So I try to avoid applying for it too early because I think that can stuff you up a little bit if the person's not quite
matured.
There.
Yep.
So it does tend to be better if you wait until sort of 18-ish.
I personally actually think this model should be delivered to everybody, because let's be honest, most 18-year-olds, even as a teenager when I first started work, I thought I knew everything. I had no idea. I had no idea about my rights as an employee, like an employee, you know what I mean? There's a lot of things you don't know, which I'll teach people, and I'm telling them, like, to be honest, everyone should know this stuff, because you don't realise it, you kind of get taken advantage of, and then you have to go on that hard road of learning, which can take years, or some people end up being stuck because they never really get out of the mindset and they've been beaten down a little bit. So, yeah, it's more about making sure, you know, it's the right fit, but also too that I actually think these are skills that everybody should know. Yeah, it's really important.
Do you also talk about things like hygiene?
Yes, we do.
And how to groom and dress yourself so you're dressed and hygienically ready for work?
Yep, I always explain, okay, you know, what's the shower routine, especially for a job interview, how do you want to look? Have your hair brushed or cut? You know, there's those certain things. I always tell, especially the blokes, I always joke with them, make sure to put on the perfume. And they're like, it's cologne. No, I'm like, no, it's perfume. You want to smell nice and make sure everyone else thinks, wow, they smell great. But yeah, it's also when they get the job as well, explaining these are the routines you need to keep up. Like, it's not just okay, I've got the job, I will just go back to showering every other day. I'll wear deodorant occasionally. No, these are important things that you need to know.
You got to change your underpants every day.
Oh, why? All right. Well, maybe you might be right. Or you could just do the freezer trick that I heard from a lot of blokes that would use. I know, it's gross.
What is the freezer trick?
So to get rid of the smell, you chuck it in your freezer and you can just rewear it. You don't need to wash it. I know. Isn't that just super hygienic and clean?
So what about the food in your freezer?
Oh, look, I don't know. I've never personally attempted this. When I was told it, I was a little bit horrified and disgusted, and they were confused as to why. But, you know, explain to people that, like, hey, it's really not that hard to chuck it in the wash and chuck it on the line. But no, look, sometimes it is.
also, I think that, I do see for people with autism, you know, transition is hard. And there's a transition in getting all your clothes off and getting fresh ones on. And that can be really tough for some people with autism. And I totally appreciate that. But at least at a minimum, you have to change your underpants.
I just always think deodorant, especially in the weather that we have, like how hot it is. We all know if you forget deodorant, how bad do you smell? Like no matter what, no matter if you've had a shower that morning or just before you went out, you haven't got deodorant on, it's really not crash hot. That also in like clean clothes too, because no one really wants to see like tomato sauce or things all over your shirt because they are wondering, okay, well, how long has that actually been on your shirt for? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a participant who misunderstood about breaks.
Yes.
And went to work and they were like, okay, you can go on like lunch. And then he left and came back like 3 hours later because hadn't understood there's like time
it's
limits.
like a 30-minute break, mate. Yeah. A 3-hour break,
Yeah. So I'm guessing you also sort of touch on those.
Yes, I explain that. I also too recommend having a timer and going, okay, so find out how long your break is, pop your timer on, and then you know, okay, well, this is when I start work. I've also had to explain to a couple of my people because they're like, oh, no, I just keep working until I get the job done. And I'm like, okay, well, that's nice, but if you're not having a sip of water as well, because, you know, sometimes they're just so focused, they're not drinking water, they get dehydrated, sick, especially out in the heat, you know what I mean? Could you imagine landscaping right now and not regularly sipping water? You're probably going to get heat stroke. You probably will anyway. But you know what I mean? It's going to be a lot worse. And making sure they realise that, like, hey, look, food's fuel, and I get that you want to complete this task, but sometimes you need to eat, and it'll make the job a lot quicker as well, because if you're hungry as well, your brain usually doesn't function that great, and you're not really thinking, and it's going to take you a lot longer than if you just had a half an hour break or even 10 minutes, had a quick bite to eat and got back to work.
Yeah, we had this thing at Big W where we'd have to go across the entire store to the back, and that's where like our tea room was.
Yeah.
And the idea was that you were supposed to be back at the register at the front of the store by the time you're half. So really it wasn't half an hour because you had to spend 5 minutes walking from one end of the store to the other. Yeah. And I personally never stuck to that rule because I was like, bullshit to that. I'll be back at the in 35 minutes because there's no way I'm cutting into my break.
No, but it's also too that, like, I remember, so some jobs I would start like an hour early thinking, you know what, this is really getting me further ahead. It really wasn't. I realised very quickly that no one's really that thankful and you're pretty replaceable. You'd like to think you're not, but you are, and no one's really going to thank you for all the extra work. It's the same that I would go for lunch. I would have 2 bites to eat and someone would be like, I need your help, so I'd have to go down. But no, that was still taken out of my break time. I wasn't actually able to have a proper lunch. So I've learnt like clear boundaries and explaining that to people as well, because you don't want to be taken advantage of and used. And it happens more often than not because they're not going to be, like I said, really thankful. Be like, oh my God, you started an hour earlier day. They're not thanking you for that. Yeah, and you kind of realise very quickly that, you know, they appreciate it kind of, but they don't really care. If you get sick or whatever and they replace you, it just happens very quickly.
Absolutely. Have you got any success stories that you want to tell us?
Ooh,
keeping in mind privacy, and I understand that, but like in a vague way.
So I've got a few people into employment. So one lady I have, she really, really wanted to work at Woolworths. It's just all she wanted. Could not see anything else. I mean, I tried she just wanted Woolworths. So, and she just wanted click and collect. It was very regimented and set, you know, ASD tendencies, I guess, sometimes, so that sort of stuff. It's just this one sole focus. There is nothing else. It took us about 6 months because, you know, the HR process is a nightmare. So I was banging down Woolworths doors and basically harassing them a little bit, or canvassing. And, yeah, we So we figured out some like loopholes and stuff on how to kind of get your resume ahead in Woolworths. So we got her the job. She was so excited and she's loving it. So yeah, it's just, yeah.
I'm so glad she actually loves it, because it would be really unfortunate if
I know
she
she
built
hates
it up in her mind and then finally got it and went, oh my gosh, this sucks.
She did have a lot of anxiety at the start of it, and I was like, yeah, well, these are the things. We worked through all of that. I've got another one. He just wasn't sure. He was getting into a lot of trouble. He's 15, so, idle hands make for the devil's, playground. So I spoke to his mum and she just said, we just want him tired. He just needs to work because he doesn't want to go to school. He needs to be tired. And I couldn't agree more, because you know what? When you're working pretty full-on hours, you're not really inclined to get into trouble because you're too tired. And also you've got money now too. So I actually got him working in my father-in-law's asphalt company because I thought, you know what, he likes being outdoors. These guys as well. Also too, he told me that he wasn't afraid to go to jail and that he wanted to go to jail, and, the 15-year-old mentality. So my father-in-law has a couple of ex-cons, so I said, could you please explain actually what prison's like for him, because he needs to know the real world consequences of it, because he was always like, I'll be fine, and I'm like, mate, there's no one that's fine in jail. It's not good for anybody. Everyone gets bullied, harassed, and you know what else happens. So yeah, you don't want to. So he changed pretty quickly. He's changing his life very quickly because, like I said, they had some real conversations about the real world and actually what it's like, and he's really enjoying just working and being a part of a crew, because that's what they like to call themselves, and just, being with the boys basically and working. Doesn't particularly, I said, well, how's the job? He goes, it's shit work, but it's good money. And I was like, well, that is accurate. And I said, but do you hate actually being around everyone? He goes, no, I like that. I just don't really like the actual physical part of it sometimes. He said, but I still want to go. So I was like, well, that's great. You sometimes can't get all wins, but the money sometimes is great. And he's got a really good connection with the work crew because they've got a couple of teenage boys as well. So it kind of just did everyone good.
Oh, that's so important to like your co-workers.
I find it's usually more important to like your co-workers than it is the job, because the job might be a bit mind-numbing, but it's usually not so bad if you actually like the people you're with, because that makes a better day. Because even if it's the dream job and you absolutely love the job, if the co-workers are crap, it's crap. It's not good. It makes the whole day so much longer and harder, whereas at least if you had laughing and, having fun, within reason, of course, at work, it makes the day go a lot quicker and everyone's happier.
Absolutely. Awesome. So our final question is, in your ideal world, what would the future of the NDIS look like?
It's a bit of a hard one because there's lots of different parts to it. Definitely making it easier to get NDIS plans. I've seen the paperwork that people have to fill out and it's a nightmare. I don't want to do it. And I understand, especially with parents, why they don't want to do it as well, because a lot of the parents have disabilities as well, and it makes life just so much harder. Because I haven't got a disability. I've looked at the paperwork and I'm like, I don't know what you want from me. I don't want to do this. So then they put it aside, and sometimes kids get kind of on the plans far too late when they probably could have gotten help a lot quicker. I think it's always so good to know some good support coordinators, because they will know, who to help. There's some that do it pro bono as well, which I know a few, and I always say, well, these guys will help you out. At least give you a rough idea of what you need to do, because like I said, you read it and you think, this is just a nightmare. I don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And I understand why parents avoid it, because like I said, I don't want to do it. So making NDIS plans easier, just making it more accessible, everything more accessible for people with a disability too, because I don't think they think about that. If the parents have a disability, how much harder it is to actually fill out that paperwork. I feel like there needs to be a better system for those types of cases, so people can actually get the help they need and not kind of be stuck and backed into a corner. Because it's a little bit alarming, but I really just hope for the future that things are a little bit more, we've got a little bit more diversity and equality put in it as well, because I don't know, I find that there's just not a lot of knowledge as well around the NDIS. No one completely knows one hand saying to the other sometimes, as we know. So I just think everything just needs a shake-up, and we can see the shake-ups already starting. I'm hoping that it's all for the positive. I'm guessing there might be some things that probably aren't crash hot, but you know what? Hopefully processes will be better and life will just be made easier for people with a disability.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Please share with people you know. Until next time, as the Green Brothers say, don't forget to be awesome.